going to read from James today, he's addressing primarily followers of Jesus Christ. And he's addressing this battle that we face. When you came to church today, you maybe fought a battle in your mind that sounded something like this. I wonder where he gets the money to pay for a car like that. Because I thought he worked for, there he's driving a car like that. I can't believe she wore that to church. You know, she's one of the most unfriendly people I've ever met. I don't know why she doesn't talk to people. She probably is so full of herself. She probably thinks she's so full of herself and so good that she can't talk to people like me. You know, I just can't believe that people with tattoos would let their tattoos show like that. And don't they know that God doesn't love people that have tattoos? I mean, we all know that, don't we? Look at the piercings all over their face. Did they fall into a tackle box or what? You know? But we think thoughts like this, don't we? And the amazing thing about thoughts that we have in our mind like this, the amazing thing is they're totally irrelevant. There's no relevancy to it whatsoever. We don't know the person's story. We don't know the truth. We don't know the background. And the other incredible thing about this is we are so arrogant. We don't think that people have those kinds of thoughts about us. Because we are the standard, aren't we? We're the standard. I mean, if everybody dressed like us, looked like us, drove what we drove, I mean, what would there be to talk about? I mean, it would just be kind of a boring life because, like, we're the standard. I'm sure that when I walk into a public place, when I go to the office tomorrow or to the school tomorrow, I'm sure that nobody thinks those thoughts about me, but I know that I think those thoughts about other people. And James writes about that. And James writes a very uncomfortable passage for us. We're going to break down a little bit. If you brought a Bible, we're going to go to the book of James again. We're going to go to chapter 2. We're going to read several verses. We're going to talk about them, see how they apply to us, and then at the end what we can do. And so that's where we're going to go today. So James chapter 2, we're going to begin right away in verse number 1. And James addresses a topic we would just call favoritism. And we probably don't think much about showing favorites, but believe me, if you're not uncomfortable yet, we're going to make it worse before you leave here today, okay? In fact, James is going to really drill down and show us some things about our hearts that we tend to gloss over, and we don't even know that they're there unless somebody talks about them for a little bit. So if you brought a Bible, go to James chapter 2, verse number 1. James kind of sets it up here right away when he says, "My dear brothers and sisters." Has anybody ever talked to you? Maybe your parent, your mother was like that, "My dear child." I mean, you knew something was going to follow. That's kind of how James starts right here. How can you claim to have faith? He's speaking to Christians who claimed to have faith. How can you claim to have faith in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ if you favor some people over other people? Wait. How do you know that I favor some people over other people? Well, I'll give you an illustration in a moment, but if I don't need to give you an illustration, I just know people. And people have this thing inside of them that they fight with called a sin nature, and that sin nature inside of us tends to categorize people and play favorites with people, and we get ourselves into a lot of trouble. So he just knows this about us. So he says, brothers and sisters. In other words, you know what? There's times when we come together in a church and we look at people. We start to size up people. We make an evaluation about people based upon what they're wearing or not wearing, what they drove or can't drive, and where they work or where they don't work. We start to evaluate people based upon all of these things. And as soon as we start to categorize people based on some of these very strange ideas, we start to set categories for people and set standards for people that God himself doesn't even have. All of a sudden, we don't know it until somebody starts to bring this out, that we do play favorites, but we start to categorize people. We start to divide the body. What if God accepted us the same way we accepted others? What if God said, look, you need an IQ of 135 before I even reach out to you with my son Jesus? I'm lost. How about you, okay? What if God said, you need to make a certain amount of money? What if you need to dress a certain way? You need to be a certain race. In fact, it kind of looked that way in the Old Testament for a while, that it was only the Jews that were going to have any kind of a hope. What if God just said, look, I'm going to set some different standards for you. I'm going to set really high standards for you if you want to come to faith in Jesus Christ. And what favoritism does is it sets up categories that God doesn't even recognize. Now, I know that you never thought of it like that. That's why James had to write about it. Look at verse number 2. He gives an illustration. Let me give you an illustration. He says, for example, Now, he's writing to a church that would meet in a home. It wouldn't be in a big building like this, but it could apply right here as well. And this illustration that he's going to give might seem maybe not so relevant for us, but there's a principle, there's an attitude that he's going to bring out in what he's about to say. People are sitting around in somebody's house, and they're just finishing their coffees. They're kind of waiting for everybody to get there, and almost simultaneously, two people come through the door at the same time. Almost having to rub shoulders with one another as they walk through the doors. And he says, suppose somebody comes into your meeting. We're meeting at somebody's house, and they're all dressed in fancy clothes and expensive jewelry. Now, if they're dressed that way, we make a natural assumption about them. If they can dress in fancy clothes and have all this jewelry, they have money, right? At the same time, there's this other one who comes in who is poor and dressed in dirty clothes. It doesn't have to be in a Bible study. It can be in a church. It can be in the workplace. It can be everywhere. So here's the scenario. He elaborates, verse 3. If you give special attention and a good seat to the rich person, but you say to the poor person, well, why don't you just stand over there, or maybe just sit down here on the floor, and you stop right there and you go, but Pat, wait, we would never do that. I mean, we've all been someplace where we kind of know who's got wealth and who doesn't have wealth. We kind of make assumptions. I mean, we've categorized some people. We would never do that, Pastor. Yeah, but he's not done with us yet. So he says, you tell him, sit on the floor. Look at verse 4. Well, doesn't this show discrimination, that your judgments are guided with evil motives? Well, yeah, I suppose, but you don't have to talk about it, all right? So here's what James is saying. So you're sitting in the meeting, here comes the rich guy, and you're just a brand new church. You're just starting to meet in Bob's home, all right? And you're meeting in Bob's home, and we've got this church going. It's a good thing. And you know what? We really need an organ, but we don't have enough money to buy an organ. Suddenly, somebody comes walking through the door. Somebody in the group has been kind of reaching out to one of the business owners in town. They come walking through the door at the same time as Ed. Poor Ed doesn't have 2 nickels to rub together. But this rich guy, hey, have a seat over here. Suddenly we're thinking about what we can gain through that relationship. Hey, it's so good to have you here. Did I happen to mention we need a new organ for our church? You know? And we start to look at people, don't we? And we do this all the time subconsciously. If we can name drop, we love to name drop. If we can associate with somebody with position or power or maybe some money, you know, we love to leverage our relationships so that we can name drop like that. Because there's this thing inside of you and this thing inside of me that says, because they have power, because they have position, because they have finances, they have something that could be useful to me. In other words, what can I gain through a relationship with you? What do you have to offer me? And James says, that's inside you, and that's inside of me. You start to place a value on people that God doesn't even recognize. And God works so hard to make the body one. Jesus died, one faith, one baptism, one goal, one mission, one purpose, one God, one heaven. And then we come to church, and subconsciously we start to chop up the body because we have preferences. We start to play favorites, and we use a judgment with evil intent. And James says, do you want to have the kind of faith that God recognizes? I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, it would be awesome if God would pat us on the back and say, you're doing a good job. We would all love to hear that from God. You're doing a good job. I like the way you're following me. Good job. Your faith is growing. Good job. But James says, look, if you want to have a faith that God would pat on the back, you can't show favoritism. In fact, let me just summarize a little bit what James is saying. If you show favoritism, I can summarize it in just 2 words. Stop it. Just stop it. Just stop doing that. That's what James says. You can't do that anymore. In fact, maybe you left the church. You might have left the church. And the reason you left the church wasn't because of doctrine, might not have been because of the music. What you start to see is there's political things going on inside. It just got so political. And you know why it got political? Because people had favorites. There were people that were leveraging power and position and trying to get stuff done, and they wanted their way, and certain people knew who to curry their favors from in order to get what they wanted for the church. And you saw it happen, didn't you? And you were just a nobody. You were just a fly on the wall. Or if not a fly on the wall, you were just overlooked because you thought you had power and principle and position, but you didn't get noticed, and so you just left the church. James knew that this matter had to be addressed, He knew that it's an attitude that could be so subtle in all of us. He elaborates a little bit more. Look at verse number 5. He says, listen to me, dear brothers and sisters. Hasn't God chosen the poor in this world? This is a rhetorical question. Hasn't he chosen the poor in this world to be rich in faith? I'll explain in just a moment what he means. Aren't they the ones who will inherit the kingdom that God has promised to those who love him? You know what God honors? God doesn't honor beauty. God doesn't honor position. God doesn't honor wealth. God honors faith. And James says the one that God is honoring is the one that you're dishonoring. He walked into your meeting. You told him to sit on the floor. You're dishonoring that person. And you know why that person is supposed to be honored? Because it's all about faith. It's hard to maintain faith in a good God when life isn't very good. But the poor people, they do. Rich people, well, why do I need to trust God? I got everything that I need. But the poor person, they're crying out to God. So they got to have faith. And James says in that moment, you just dishonored them. And even in the church, we can value the wrong people because we have the wrong values. It just happens. Verse 6, he goes, but you dishonor the poor. Isn't it the rich? And understand the culture that he's writing to. You were either very wealthy or very poor. Might made right. So if you had wealth, you had power. If you had power, you could leverage your power to get your way, and poor people meant nothing. They were just a step to get to the next place. So he said, isn't it the rich who oppress you and drag you into court? And they all would have hung their heads and went, yeah. Aren't they the ones who slandered Jesus Christ, whose noble name you bear? Yeah. But you've dishonored the one that God honors. And God honors faith. Now, look, in this church, in our culture, this isn't necessarily a rich thing, poor thing. It's not about the rich and the poor. In fact, if you don't realize this, all of you in this room today, if you're watching at home or watching online, the fact that you can watch at home or online tells me you're rich. You're very affluent. You have nothing that you need to worry about. You've got everything that you need. Oh, you got bills to pay. You know what? Just let me be frustrated. You just be frustrated in a moment. Okay, all right, we're going to get over this. Okay, we're good. Okay, you try to wear this, see how it goes for you. Look, it's not a rich or poor thing. So we can't really identify with what James is saying on the whole rich or poor thing, but I made a list of people that we either like or don't like. This isn't my list. It might not be your list, but it's a list. And let's see if you can relate to this, because for us it's probably not about being rich or being poor, but some of you, let's just be honest, you don't like fat people. You look at fat people and you think fat people are just undisciplined. You don't like them. Some of you don't like skinny people. Maybe because you wish you were skinny. And you just decided in your mind you don't like them. You know what? Some of the single ladies in the church, if you're an older single lady, you don't like the single younger ladies. You know why? Because they're encroaching on your territory. The younger single ladies, they don't like the older single ladies. They're thinking, older single ladies, you had your chance with the guys. Just move on. Just get over it. This is our chance. This is our opportunity. Some of the younger single guys, you don't like the older single guys. You look at them as competition. You're over the hill. Get on. Move on with it. Just accept it, right? We're here now. Okay? Some of you, you don't like black people. Don't know why. Just don't like them. Some of you don't like white people. Some of you are still back in World War II. You don't like Oriental people. Some of you don't like Hispanic people. Don't know why. Just don't like them. Every time you walk in a room and you see them, these feelings come inside of you. Some of you don't like divorced people. God bless, you've been happily married for 38 years, and if I can endure it, they can too. You know, no patience for those divorced people. Don't like them. Some of you don't like single moms. You see single moms, and they're walking into the church, and they've got children in tow. There's no man around, and you look at their left hand, and there's no ring on that finger. Well, I wonder what she did to ruin that marriage. Some of you don't like people with tattoos, because you know tattooed people, you know what if they got tattoos, they got problems. Probably drink too, do drugs, just like them people with piercings. Everybody knows if you get a piercing, you got problems, right? You just don't like people with piercings. Some of you you don't like people with bad taste in clothing, like, who dressed you? Certainly not your mama, because nothing matches. Like, where do you shop? Ben Franklin? I don't know, you know. Some of you don't even know what Ben Franklin is, do you? Okay? Right? The 5 and dime. And here's the incredible thing. We think these thoughts about people, don't we? And God is listening. Going, wait. I like people with tattoos and piercings. I like single moms and divorced people. I like fat kids, skinny kids, kids who climb on rocks. I like people. Some of you don't like stay-at-home moms. Some of you don't like stay-at-home dads. Some of you you see somebody in a jean skirt and their hair's in the bun. Oh, homeschooler, I can hear the wheat grinding now, You don't like homeschoolers, just don't like them. Homeschoolers, you don't like, I just can't believe parents would send their children to the lions in the public school. Just don't like those public school kind of people, don't like them at all. Some of you don't like working moms. You need to be at home with your children. Some of you don't like artsy people because artsy people are effeminate people, and I just don't like effeminate people, and everybody who's effeminate, they're probably artsy, and I just don't like them. Some of you don't like business people. Business people are so stuck on themselves. They just think they're better than everybody else. They got all this money and power and position. Some of you don't like people with lots of kids. What is the problem with them? Don't they have any restraint? They got pills for that. Some of you don't like people with only one child, because how could they be so selfish to only have one child? And the whole time God is listening to this going, hold on. At one point in your life, you cried out to me for salvation. You were a sinner. You were a sinner just steeped in your sin, and your destination at that point in time was hell. I didn't wait for you to change. I just accepted you for what you were. And now you've been accepted. I redeemed you. I moved towards you long before you ever moved towards me. I loved you before you ever loved me. I just unconditionally accepted you. And now you found that acceptance, that love that I had for you set you free. And now what are you doing to the body? Wait, let me get this straight. I'm not supposed to like the people you don't like too? God's listening to our thoughts. And this is the kind of attitude that can be so subtle that James writes about. You and I, we draw conclusions about people. We don't even know the story. What if God saved us based upon our own standards for other people? We're sunk. Jesus died to make us one, and we come together and just split us up. Verse number 8, now he's kind of getting into the solution to the problem. He says, yes, it is. It's good when we obey the royal law as found in Scripture. And this is the antidote. Here's the antidote to the very attitude I've been addressing. Here's the antidote. Love your neighbor as yourself. Seems like a simple solution, doesn't it? Until you walk out of this room. It seems really easy until that person that you don't like walks in the room. Just don't like them. There's this thing inside of you that wants to make judgment calls about people. And so James says, look, when that thing comes inside of you, because it's in all of us, it's in you and it's in me, James says what we need to go back to is the royal law. This comes from Leviticus. Love the Lord your God with all your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbors, you love yourself. In fact, the Pharisees said, look, Jesus, there's like 630 laws that us Jews keep, and which one is the best one? Let's just narrow it down to one. And Jesus said, well, I really can't go with one. Let me give you two. Number one, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, strength. And the second one is equal to it in value. Love your neighbors, you love yourself. Can we only have just two rules. Do you know how many rules there are in the nation that you live in? I'm pretty sure we break a lot of, just a lot of laws, a lot of rules. There's rules in the home, there's rules in the city, there's rules in the state, rules in the nation. Jesus said, I'll make it easy. I'll just give you two, all right? This will be the easiest thing. I'll just give you two rules. Can you just follow the two? That's what it comes down to. Verse number 9 now, he gets a little bit personal in verse number 9. But if you favor some people over others, and we have all done this, haven't we? I'm as guilty as you are. Look what he says about that. You're committing a sin. You're guilty of breaking the law. Wait. I thought murder was a sin. Yeah, murder's up there. I thought adultery was a sin. Yeah, it's kind of right up there with the whole murder thing. I never thought of showing favoritism as a sin. I didn't, and you probably didn't either, but James says, it is, because God made people in his image, and he loves them all. And So we're supposed to as well. Verse 10 says, for the person who keeps all the laws except one, is as guilty as the person who's broken all of God's laws. If we break laws, that makes us a lawbreaker. What do you guys think of lawbreakers? What should we do with lawbreakers? Well, Pastor, I'm not that bad. I mean, isn't that kind of the way we assess ourselves and look at things? And we become lawbreakers. Jesus says, look, I only gave you 2. Can we just work on it? I just gave you 2. Now, here's the fortunate thing in all of this, as uncomfortable as this might get for you. I find no illustrations from our own church on any of this. No illustrations from our church on any of this. But I know the tendency is in me. James says, let's just call it for what it is. Verse number 12, he says, so here's what I want you to think about. Here's kind of where we're supposed to work on these things. Whatever you say, whatever is pretty all-inclusive, wouldn't you say? I mean, whatever is whatever. It's whatever. Whatever you say and whatever you do, remember. Remember that you'll be judged by the law that set you free. Remember. Here's the action point for us. Remember. One day, if you stay faithful to Jesus Christ through all of your life, all of those who do that, one day, remember, James says, remember this, because this is not something that we normally think about. We don't think about heaven. We're thinking about what's for lunch, where we're going. We got to get the kids up for school tomorrow morning. If you're in school, you're thinking about, tomorrow school starts. I mean, you're thinking about the next 24 to 48 hours. You're not thinking about eternity. So that's why James says, remember. One day we're all going to stand and Jesus is going to be seated on his judgment throne. And people who are followers of Jesus Christ, we don't get the free pass into heaven until we get to the judgment throne. And there we stand before Jesus to be judged for the deeds we've done in the body, whether good or bad, according to 2 Corinthians. And we stand before Jesus, and we need to remember this. And James says, when you get there, remember that not only the people you liked on earth will be standing there, but the people you didn't like will be standing there. Does it get any worse than a homeschooling, tattooed, pierced, divorced person? I mean, what are they doing in heaven? They got no right, no business being here. They're going to be there. They're going to be there. Those people will be there with us. And then in verse number 13, just like, since we've already got the knife stuck in a little bit, let's twist it a little bit more. Verse 13, there will be no mercy for those who have not shown mercy to others. He's talking about the here and the now, not showing mercy to others. But if you have been merciful, do you know it's easiest to be merciful to people when you remember how merciful God was to you? When you remember who you were before coming to faith in Christ, or if you would remember what you would be if you didn't have faith in Christ, then it's easier to show mercy to people that we don't necessarily like. Then God will be merciful when he judges you. I want mercy. I need mercy. I'm pretty sure that when I walk into church on Sunday morning, I'm pretty sure that nobody thinks any evil about me. I'm pretty sure of that. I mean, what is there to think evil about me, right? But I know the struggles I can have. I'm pretty sure that nobody thinks evil about you either. I'm pretty sure that nobody thinks evil of you. But I bet you have the battle sometimes in your mind, don't you? James says, if we're doing that, we need to stop it. Well, how do I stop it? Let me challenge you with this. This can be hard, or it can be relatively easy. You start to pray for the person you don't like, or the personality type. You just start to pray for them. And look, prayers can go two different ways, right? Oh God, please help those public school people understand What a vile and evil thing they're doing, sending their kids off to public school. Jesus, you need to change their hearts and attitudes. And Lord, when I send them this homeschool starter kit, they'll just understand, you know. Or we can say, God, I really struggle with loving people that aren't like me and don't think like me. Please help me see them like you see them. Lord, I don't understand their past. I don't know how they were raised or what happened to them. So God, this has just got to be you. You got to help me love them. There's other words for this that could be uncomfortable to use in the church. It would be words like discrimination, prejudice. James just used this politically correct term called favoritism, but it's really the same kind of a thing. And so as we close today, I just wonder who you need to pray for today before we go home.